A warm welcome to the show. Warsaw has just witnessed the premiere of Falstaff, bringing the spotlight onto one of the greatest figures of 19th century Italian music, Giuseppe Verdi. In this lively and witty final opera, Verdi turns to comedy. To discuss the opera and its characters, I'm joined by Wojciech Parchem, who performs the role of Dr. Caius, one of the key figures in this funny story. Hello and welcome, delighted to have you with us.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
So, Falstaff was written in the 19th century, however, it is considered fairly modern. Why so?
Well, because I think that Verdi, with this opera, somehow paved the path for the modern musical theatre. We know Verdi, from Traviata, Aida, Don Carlo, when the characters were very individual, and they had, for instance, long scenes. Let's take as an example the fourth act of Aida, which belongs fully to Amneris, And in Falstaff, Verdi decided to create a group of people who talk all the time, It is more lively in the sense of musical theatre. The utterances are short, we interrupt each other very often, so it requires a special approach also from the part of the singers. And it's also very interesting how Verdi commented with the orchestra, how he commented on the emotions, on what's going on stage, on what are we talking in this particular moment. It's very lively, it's very colorful, and it's very theatrical. So I think this is one of the milestones in the history of the opera, of the musical theatre.
As you've pointed out, Verdi was associated with dramatic tragedy. So why did he turn to comedy for his last final opera?
I wish I knew. I think it was Verdi's sort of irony. And maybe, he grew up with his musical workshop. He decided, to show his abilities to create the musical word, the operatic word, with a different theme. And maybe also because he was strongly involved with William Shakespeare. As we know, he composed Othello, Macbeth, and maybe this was his, final choice, a bit ironical, as I said before, to turn into a Shakespearean comedy, The Merry Widows, with great success. I must say, it is, in my opinion, Verdi's musical heritage, this opera, It's very unique, it's very sophisticated in terms of orchestration, in terms of characterization of the roles. So I think Verdi had the opportunity to show all his mastery with his final work.
And so what elements from the Merry Wives of Windsor can we find in Falstaff?
The title character, of course, but I dare say the woman power. This is, in my opinion, also the play as well as the opera, it is very feminist. Because at the very end of the opera, we see that women in this work, although oppressed, in this male culture, fought and wanting Dr. Caius to marry his daughter Nanetta, and this kind of arrangements and putting women in a certain social roles, they played, the women, they decided to, with intelligence, with wit, they decided to take the baton and, rule and lead the story their way. So I think this is the main theme, the main spirit of the Shakespearean play and the Verdi's opera. So women, they have it hard at the beginning, but they are together, they build strong friendship, and they win, eventually.
And that's the most important thing, of course, and a very, very good point indeed. But I wanted to ask you from a singer's perspective. You've mentioned there's this big part of the collective in Falstaff. So is it more difficult to perform as a part of the collective or to sing solo?
It's hard to say, because each situation has its pros and cons, but it's demanding. It requires certain skills, a certain sensibility, you know. You have to be very alert all the time. You have to watch your partners. You have to respond to their reaction immediately. You have to be very involved, you know, in this. You can't just, you know, focus on your singing, because sometimes, you know, your singing is that demanding that you really have to focus on yourself and deliver your difficult aria. But in this case, you never has this feeling that you are on your own. You are always, you know, involved in actions, in your partner's proposals, what to do. And it's not that it's once fixed, you just repeat, you know, with every performance you repeat the set of gestures and movements. No, it's always an interaction. Yes, this work, you know, this performance, it happens, you know, in this particular moment with every performance. So this is what is, in my opinion, most difficult. That you really have to be, to go beyond yourself, to be a part of a group, which is not always that easy for an opera singer. You know, this is a very individualistic profession, I would say. So it supports, you know, thinking of yourself, which is also understandable, because you have to focus on your voice, you have to deliver certain things, you know, as a singer. And in this case, you have to act very differently.
So I must ask you this, what is the most challenging situation you've ever faced while on stage?
Oh, maybe during the last premiere, because I got, you know, at the very end, just, you know, there's a lot of movement, and I got some knee injury that looked very serious. And I had to stand up and sing, which I did. So this was pretty challenging. You know, but
no one could tell, no one noticed.
No, even my family, you know, sitting in the audience, they were surprised after the show that something happened. So this requires, you know, you have to be cold-blooded, you know, in this situation, but you are also very focused on your work. So you start thinking what had happened, you know, after the show has ended. But, you know, every opera production is a challenge. It's always an adventure. It's you are going to do something, to go there where you don't know. You never know what will meet you at the end of this way. So you meet a group of people, you take the score, you take the drama, the text, the libretto, and you start working. And this is one of the miracles that, you know, from this group of people, this creation, this creative power, and the material you get, at the very end there is a real being on stage. There is something that you have created that is very temporary. It lasts only, you know, for the time of the performance, but it's very beautiful and fascinating, I must say.
So let's turn to this particular character that you're playing, Dr. Caius, here in Warsaw. What were the challenges, the most rewarding moments? How do you evaluate it overall?
Well, this is not, because generally in Falstaff there is the title role, but there is a lot of equal characters, you know, a group of people who don't have any aria, they are all on stage all the time. But the musical material is demanding and difficult. It's maybe not very spectacular, but it requires certain abilities. And, you know, the challenge was to, on one hand, to melt, you know, into this group of people and to be integrated with them. On the other, to create a very precise mixture of music and theatre, because you don't have time. It's very dynamic, it's very lively, the music, the orchestration, so you really have no time to think on stage. You have to prepare a very precise mixture of theatre, of gesture, of, you know, body movement, and your singing. And it needs to be also that precise and that strong that it's immediately legible to the audience. So this was the challenge, to make this person also, because this person is a bit one-dimensional, I would say, and to put some real life, to make this person, this character, not that one-dimensional, to show this character as a real person, with emotions, within short time periods you have in this opera. This was very challenging, I think.
But have you enjoyed playing this character?
Yes, it was demanding, I must say, because, Falstaff opens with Dr. Caius, with the big, role with Falstaff, and it's very, very fast, intense, dynamic, and also challenging, because you are opening the whole show, and you set like the emotional temperature for the whole show, and you have to deliver this kind of energy. This was demanding, but also satisfying,
Must have been very stressful,
yes,
though.
But in the opera challenges also something satisfying once you succeeded,
Right. Of course. I wanted to ask you, because this particular opera has received mixed reviews, but it's not so much about the music. And I wanted to ask you, how do staging and direction choices influence this comedic impact that the show has? What do you think about this?
I think it was Marek Weiss' interesting approach to find within this, let's say, superficially in comedy, to find a layer that is not that funny, that is very bitter, I would say, that is about, about ending of one's life, actually. And to put the spotlight on this part of Falstaff's fate, Falstaff's story, might not be a very obvious choice, and for some difficult to digest. That's why we have the mixed reviews, mixed voices. But I think it's always interesting to try to find something not very obvious, something different, something new in the material you are going to work on, or you are working in this particular moment. That's why we are here for, it's not interesting to, show all the same story again and again, but, to find something that is new, that is different, that is very personal, because this was also the stage director's farewell to the stage. So I think this is a personal story, and I think it's interesting, and I felt honored, to be a part of his farewell, because I can remember as a very young boy from my hometown when we came to Warsaw, to visit Warsaw I was, I don't know how old, 10, 11, and we went to the Polish National Opera, to Teatr Wielki, and the first performance I saw in my life, it was Marek Weiss' staging of Turandot. So, being a part of this particular production was, for me personally, something very, very moving and something very important that I will remember for my whole life. And yes, the story was different, but interesting, I think.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Wojciech Parchem,
thank you.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.